Hello everyone, it's Dr. Sasheen. It is Sunday, sometime in January, waiting for Winter Storm Izzy to show up. As you can see, we are not having any, let me turn off notifications here. We're not having any snow yet at all. Our skies are cloudy, overcast, but we haven't quite gotten it yet. And as you can see, a flock of birds just flew over my head. I always take that as a good sign. So I want to thank Karen Kelsky for a video that she did. I'll link to it, for a video that she did, a TED Talk that she did that really underscores a lot of the reasons why, hey, I've got someone watching. So hello out there, whoever's out there. For some reason, I'm not seeing any comments. So hello if you're out there. But Karen Kelsky did a great video on YouTube about why academia is a cult. And this video is not about academia per se, but I come from the land of academics. I'm a professor, assistant professor, have been an adjunct professor, assistant professor, co-coordinator of a degree program. Like, I've done the entire gamut of academia. So I come from the land of the ivory tower. But this video, for my ivory tower brethren, and even if you're not from the land of the ivory tower, you may find something useful here. This video is about how doing what you love, quote unquote, what you love, is not enough. It's not enough, especially when what you love isn't going to keep pace with your life. And it's not going to allow you to actually have the kind of life that you absolutely want to have, and that you probably went into a certain profession thinking that you could get it. And then the weight of that reality settled down on you, and you realize there's no way that you're ever going to come close to the reality of that life that you thought you were going to get based on things that you were told and TV illustrations or TV portrayals of life of the whatever field that you're in. So let me back up for a second. I'm Dr. Sasheen. I am a podcast host, author, and transformational life coach for women who are over the age of 40 and looking to start over. And I especially focus on women who are leaving academics, women who have been in higher education, who are ready to move on, or women who have been in high profile, like academics, high profile jobs where they have, they got the spiel that life would be great. And the reality is they are working hard for very little money. So again, I'd like to thank Karen Kelsky for her TED Talk, and I will link to it so that you can go and watch it. And I really suggest that you go watch it because she says some amazing things. I'm going to talk about some of the things that she talks about. But I want to start with why it's so important to recognize that what you love, that thing that you love, that you spent all those hours getting educated in, or you spent all those hours and hours studying for, is in fact not enough. So let's just be very clear. The way that the job market works, okay, capitalism is 101. You get trained for a job, you apply for the job, you get the job, you start with a salary, right? And then you make a salary, and if depending on the company that you work for, you will either progress upward the salary scale, even if your job never changes. You can progress up the salary scale based on merit, time, bonuses, and incentives. Academics does not work like that. This is an industry where if you get a job, okay, so let's say you get a job, and I'm talking academics as in higher education. I'm not talking K through 12. I don't know this world from which it speaks. But most people who go on to get their PhD, not master's necessarily, but PhD for certain, are looking for an ivory tower job. That's what the goal is. So let's just say you're fresh out of your PhD, you get your first job, you land that average salary for first year instructor / assistant professor is around $59,000, and you think, whoa, I have made it. That's awesome. So unlike a standard business job, you are going to not have the option to get the incentives, bonuses and incentives. That doesn't come with this job. So that $59K, that has to be something that you're willing to live with for probably 4 or 5 years. Because unlike the business world, there are no cost of living adjustments necessarily padded into faculty salaries, number one. Number two, there are no bonuses and incentives. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much you do. It doesn't matter what extracurricular things that you pick up to pad your vita. None of that matters. Once you walk in the door of higher education, you are expected to give a great swath of your time to the workings, the administrative workings of the university. So you may teach, you may advise, you may sit on committees, you may lead student clubs or be the faculty advisor for student clubs. You may do all kinds of things that you're not going to get paid for, because the assumption is, here's where I really want to start talking to you. The assumption is that love affair that brought you into academia, that love affair that let you come through the door and just wide-eyed and ready to take on the world and teach what you know and engage with those students, that intellectual headiness, that's going to be enough to sustain you. That's going to have to be enough to sustain you, because you're not going to get a raise and you're not going to get any incentive pay. There's no bonus pay. So let's say you're in year 2 on your business job and you had a really good first year. And maybe your contract was actually contingent with a raise padded into it, that after year 1, there was a clause that automatically bumped you up 5%. You know, not a whole lot, but maybe it's just COLA, cost of living. Year 2 of academics, sophomore year, you're still at $59,000. There's not really anything going to happen to that base salary to get you any more money out of the university. Now, you can start doing some things, but you also have to remember you're on the clock, because you've got to be going to conferences and you've got to be publishing. And I know someone out there is going to go, but see, you get money to go to conferences. And I'm going to say there is not enough money to cover your conference fees. You come back and you might get reimbursed for most of it, but let's be clear that even, and universities will give you per diems, and I mean, there's all kinds of ways to massage a little extra money. And that's the second piece about life in academics, is that you got to be massaging for money all the time, because remember, your salary is not going to change. If you're lucky enough to get a COLA, not going to get a big one. And if you're really unlucky, you might be at a university where all that kind of stuff is frozen because of budget constraints and cost cutting. So year 3, you're massaging money to go to conferences, you're writing, you're getting your research done because you've got to publish, because it's a publish-repair system, and you want to get to tenure, because tenure should bring a nice bump. The bump to associate professor should at least net you somewhere around $10K, right? This is fantastic. You know how long it takes to get to associate? 5 years, 5 to 6 years before you actually get the opportunity to go up at $10,000. Now let's think about this. You get out of grad school, you have no less than $100,000 in debt. No less than $100,000 in debt. The pain of student loan payback, right? Okay, so that's the first problem. The second problem is you had to take a job somewhere, anywhere, because you got to get a job. So it's probably somewhere that you don't love. But you have to stay because you got to work and you have to live. And so you've applied places and you got the job and you're going to make it work, whether it's middle of Wisconsin or California, wherever somebody said yes to you, that's where you went. You got to stay there at least 5 years in order to reap the benefits of getting a bump to associate. Now, if you're a powerhouse researcher, between year 1 and year 5 to 6, you might have been cranking out research. And that's one way to get yourself out of that year 1 job to a better salary at a better school. You start to trade on your reputation. You begin to maybe publish some books that are critically important, but not popular, because we don't like popular, but are critically important, which allows you to have a little more cachet under your belt. You might dabble into administration a little bit further to bring in a little extra money and to, again, put a little cachet under your belt. But let's say for shits and giggles, oops, I don't want to get censored, that you manage to make it to year 6 at that job, you get the bump to associates. Between the time that you entered the job at that university and the time you get to associates, life has gotten more expensive. It's just gotten more expensive, right? And there's no way for you to catch up with the 5 years that you've lost of money. But you can't ever catch that up. And so each year, you're progressively losing money. Now, this is not all about money. This is about love. And that's why the title of this video is that love is not enough. When we go into academics, we love it because we already know that it is not a profession that we're going to get rich at. What we don't understand, and I think that's especially in the past 5 to 10 years as I've been actively in academics, what we don't understand is not only are we not going to get rich, but most of us are going to stay almost at the poverty level even as associate professors. Even as associate professors, there is a reason why the oldest cars in the parking lot on campus belong to the professors because they can't afford to buy a new one, especially if that car is paid off. And some professors have been driving that same car since graduate school. How's that for you? So when you start thinking about love and how much you love academics, you have to begin to weigh that, right? And this is where it also applies to business. So you might have gotten your MBA, and I'm in business administration. You might have gotten, a degree in informatics. You might have gone to law school. And what you realize is that all of the love that brought you into the profession is not enough to keep you there. And usually it's because you're doing a lot of work to get a lifestyle that you can't actually reach. Because even in the higher paying professions, doctors, lawyers, dentists, they work a lot. $400,000 in loans is no joke, right? They work a lot. And most doctors, we think that doctors are rolling in the dough and they have got the big houses and the nice cars. And there are a lot of them that do. And there are a lot of them that are still paying off $500,000 worth of student loans. Unless they're doing some very creative things like working in places that gets those loans forgiven so that they don't have so much going in. Some go into the military. The military is really excited when people who have big student loans because they've gotten those MDs or DOs go, let me commission, because then the military will pay for my love, because my love is medicine. And I really want to do it, but gosh dang it, do I have to be so broke doing it? So, I'm going to stick with academics, like I said, because that's where I come from. But if you see yourself in your current position, you look around, you have to ask yourself, because if you're watching this video, you're asking yourself anyway, what is it about this that I love so much that I'm willing to continue to live in almost poverty to do it? What is it about this that I find so fascinating that I'm literally willing to give over most of the best years of my life to do it, with the understanding that I may never be able to do anything else, and with the realization that I may never be able to afford to buy a home if I don't marry another academic. I may never be able to, this one was hard for me. I may never be able to move anywhere that I want to move because I have to go where I can find a job. Same is true that's true for everybody. It's no different for academics. In some ways, I think it's even worse for academics because there aren't enough jobs to go around. There simply are not enough jobs to go around. So you've got to apply for a job and hope that you're the one that gets picked. You fly yourself out to get interviewed, put yourself up in a hotel, fly yourself out to get interviewed, come back, cross your fingers and pray. You don't do that too many times because it's expensive. And then you have to hope that you get it. And then you have to hope that you love it, that you love being in Indiana, that living in the deepest of Texas at a university, in a small university town, is something that you can live with long term. And here's why I want you to think about what you love. As people who have managed to get through the system, you are so good at adaptation. Most of us are so good at living on less, on making do with not as much. Sorry, there are kids in the background. With making do with not as much, with not going and pursuing other things, because we are so focused on being good professors. We're focused on being good at our jobs, even though the jobs are draining us more and more every year. More and more academics are burning out. Classroom sizes are stupidly big. Technological advances don't roll through the university like people think that they do, especially in the liberal arts and sciences. When you realize that your pay is stagnant. By the way, there's a statistic that I just found that said between 2019 and 2021, salaries rose a whopping 1% across ranks in academia. 1%. 1%. Salaries across the board in academia rose 1% in 2 years. Cost of living alone, inflation alone, already means that all of us are in the hole. And if you're going down 1% every year in across the board salary raises, then you're getting further behind than everybody else. So when you think about all that you do, the time, the effort, the energy, the student loan, ooh, the student loans. And you ask yourself, or you say to yourself, I can't ever leave this, because even if I wanted to do something else that maybe paid better and made me happier, why would I give up the perks? And I want to ask you, what are the perks here? What are the perks in staying in a job that does not actually give you freedom? What are the perks of staying in a profession that doesn't actually bring you joy anymore? Because I can tell you right now, for as much as I talk to academics, and I'm still very plugged in because I am an academic, I write, I taught in the classroom up until 2 years ago. Up until last year. And as I transition out and into a different space, I know that what I am feeling and what I was feeling is definitely echoed in other people. And here's the thing, for all of the love, and I did love my profession. I got 3 degrees in one thing. I loved it so much. For all of that love, it is very difficult when you realize you can't take a vacation because you either have to work or you just can't afford it. When you realize that you may end up having to live in sketchy parts of town because what you can't afford is simply not. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, I had to go tell him to hold it down for a minute. Okay, so when you realize that you may have to live in sketchier parts of town, or you may never be able to afford a house, and you always have to be renting an apartment. You always have to be renting something. When you may not want the latest, greatest clothing, but there's something that you love, right? There's something that speaks to you, that sings to you, that you want to embrace and engage in more freely with your time, effort, and energy that you just can't. Because if you're an adjunct, you're constantly looking for work. And if you're a full professor, you're constantly busy. There are things to great, because the myth of TAs is just that, the myth. Unless you're teaching at research-based institutions and you're teaching graduate students, you don't have TAs. And the number of people teaching in graduate programs who have that are very small. So again, the job pool for the PhD is very small.